Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this morning, we shall open up with a discussion on that's President Biden's mass deportation of Haitians back to the land of death, because Haiti can be described as a land of death, because what is happening there is horrendous. And for the Biden administration to be doing something like that, you know that something is definitely wrong with the way that administration thinks and does things. Now, it's very important that we understand that the United States of America is a military empire, right? It is a military empire, and that is what empires do. I think Americans and some people of the world are also still wrestling with the idea of America being a democracy and an empire at the same time. And I've been saying this on this channel for some time now that the two cannot cohere. You have to have either or. Either you're going to be a democracy or you are going to be an empire, right? So Americans are still struggling with that concept because they still have some remnants of freedom and free institutions in the United States. However, the more the country, that's the United States, practices imperialism abroad, is the more that is going to put a strain on these free institutions in the United States. And it's time for Americans to wake up and to understand that. And I think the more I speak to people there often, and you read comments online, you realize that Americans do not have a clue as to the country that they live in. And the universities have not enlightened their minds to understand what the nation is all about. Another thing I would encourage all Americans to do is to read the Bible and try to immerse yourselves in the book of Daniel and the Revelation. And you will see very clearly that the United States has an agenda. All the empires in the world have had an agenda, and they've all been controlled by the devil. The devil is their Lord, no matter how much they pretend to be wonderful and compassionate, right? We understand, or they have penned lofty constitutions, like the United States has penned a lofty constitution with grandiose ideals, right? But the fact of the matter, it did not has not yet fulfilled those, lofty ideals for which it was founded, because it is controlled by a dark force called the enemy of our souls, the devil, the dragon. And if you read Revelation 12 and onwards, you'll understand that the US has a very important role to play in last days events, right? So we need to wake up, we need to be understanding, we need to understand, and we need to enlighten our minds, our dark minds, with the word of God. Now, in this book, Taking Back Haiti by Mary A. Randall, she has here in her introductory chapter a book that I think you should read, because it really opens up with it will help you to understand the role of the United States as an empire, and that it all started in Haiti. The whole mission of the United States was flexing its muscle in terms of how it would function as an empire. And this was from 1915. Remember now that in 1915, that was, during World War I, and the British Empire was still in existence. They had not yet fallen, right? And so the United States was there in Haiti to test its muscles and to see if its muscles had this stamina, right? The sinews there to be able to become an empire. All right, from 1915, we could see the United States, rising, right? It's imperial quest rising. Its desire to have full spectrum dominance was being hatched. right? So this is the book that Mary A. Render, I should say, and this is on page 10, right? And this is what he says here. The United States invaded Haiti in July 1915 and subsequently held the second oldest independent nation in the Western Hemisphere under military occupation for 19 years, right? So the United States was in Haiti in 1915 up until 1934, which would have added to 19 years. Very important that you understand that. Now, listen to what he continues to say. While in Haiti, Marines installed a puppet president. So as soon as they went there, they installed a puppet president, right? Which Haiti has been installing since at least 2004, right? When they had that coup against President John Bertrand Aristide, right? In 2004. Dissolved the legislature at gunpoint, denied freedom of speech, and forced a new constitution on the Caribbean nation, once more favorable to foreign investment. Now, for those of you who do not understand Haitian history, the Constitution of Haiti, when it was actually founded as an independent nation in 1804, the Constitution expressed, explicitly that white people or Europeans shall not inherit land in Haiti. They would not have the authority and the right to purchase lands there. Why did Haiti do that? Because Dominicans continue to say that, yeah, Haitians, do not like white people, they don't like Europeans, and therefore, why should we accommodate them here? Because Dominicans are made up of whites and mulattoes and mestizos and blacks, and they welcome all types of people to their country. Now, let me say what this is all about. Remember now that the Haitian Revolution was a complex undertaking. Toussaint Louverture, who started it, and he led the blacks, right, the former slaves, to victory, right, to emancipation. Now, during that revolution, he, of course, united with what he considered to be noble whites, those who pretended, right, the planter classes, at least who pretended. And some of them, a few of them might have been sincere, but the large majority of them were not sincere in, in helping Toussaint. The problem is that the planter class in Haiti, they also had their agenda because they were the ones who were overseeing the plantation. Because Haiti was just like Jamaica, it practiced absentee, plantation style, operation, slavery, in the fact that most of the planters, the slave masters, were not living in Haiti. They lived in France and other parts of the hemisphere. Now, you'd understand why too, because one, the fact of the matter is that the slave population outnumbered significantly the white or European population, the master slave population. So perhaps they did not feel safe in that country, having so many slaves, and also they had a number of rebellions. The Haitian Revolution culminated with all the rebellions that took place there. Just like in the United States, where the Civil War culminated with lots of other slave rebellions that had happened in the South, right? So the fact of the matter is that Toussaint, having formed leagues and agreements with these white planter class people, he realized afterwards that they betrayed him, right? That these white planters eventually betrayed him, because the planter class also had tensions with the reigning monarchy in France, because they were overtaxing them, and there are other complaints that they had registered against the British, not the British, but the French monarchy. So they were fighting for freedom, not for the blacks, but fighting for freedom for themselves, right? In the same way, perhaps you have in North America right now, where you might have some leftists fighting for freedoms for themselves. So you have different segments of the population vouching for freedom, but it does not necessarily mean that if they're vouching for you, right? And that is why we have to be very, very careful about when people are pushing certain what they call freedoms, because sometimes they're pushing it for them. They have their selfish agendas while you are going to be exploited. So whilst the planter class, the white planter class in Haiti before the revolution, the Haitian Revolution, was pushing for freedom, but it was not freedom for blacks because, think about it, the white planter class, how they survived. They survived by slavery, through slavery. That is how they generated their funds and they were able to become wealthy. So they were not necessarily foreseeing a future beyond slavery, beyond that economic system that they had built for years. And remember now that Haiti was the most lucrative slave colony in the Western Hemisphere at the time of the revolution. So all empires would have wanted Haiti. So that is what was happening, and we have to make those connections. With the help of the Marines, U.S. officials seized the custom houses, took control of Haitian finances, and imposed their own standards of efficiency on the administration of Haitian debt. Right? I want you to understand that. Meanwhile, Marines waged war against insurgents called Quakers, who for several years maintained an armed resistance in the countryside and imposed rather a brutal system of forced labor that engendered even more fierce Haitian resistance. By official US estimates, more than 3,000 Haitians were killed during this period. A more thorough accounting reveals that the death toll may have reached 11,500. Right? So wherever you have US military occupation, and I'm speaking to US citizens right now, right, you are going to have death and destruction, right? Wherever you have US occupation, I probably should even add, you're going to have death, destruction, and theft, right? That is what you're going to have. The pillaging and the plundering of the people's natural resources and also human resources, right, will be pillaged and plundered. And that is what US occupation is all about. Nothing has changed underneath the sun, right? You think things have changed, but things have not changed. When she says she's spreading freedom and democracy, she means that she is pillaging and plundering, and she goes there to wreak death and destruction and theft upon the people. And things have always gotten worse. Every time the United States occupies a country, things worsen, right? Things do not improve, be it economic or political or whatever sphere. Things do not improve, they worsen instead. And if you talk about the IMF, the same thing happens. They say they're there to put back your economy on track. They're not there to do that. And people are still having arguments about, surplus, and all of these things are not true. They're not true. They're a figment of the imagination. And you've got to really come to grips with that reality now. How long are you going to continue to repeat the same error ad nauseum without beginning to able to think? Because many of you lack that ability to think. Now, one of the things that we have to understand is that the Biden's administration, the Biden administration, not the Bidens, but the Biden administration, is seeking to, deport as many Haitians as possible. And we know that they are being sent back to a very dangerous, right, and unstable environment. And what is very interesting, and Jemima Pear, Haitian American associate professor at the University of British Columbia, has said that the United States is also deporting children who have never been brought up in Haiti. They have no understanding of Haitian culture, right? Even young babies are being deported. What happened in 2010, immediately after the earthquake, Many Haitians got the invitation to go to Chile and to Brazil. In Brazil, they were preparing for the Olympics. And there was something also being held in Brazil, I can't remember, but the Olympics was what they were preparing for in 2010, because at that time they knew that they were going to house the games there. I think it was in 2015. So many Haitians went there. And I spoke to Haitians who were telling me that they had relatives and friends who were moving to Brazil. Around about 2012, I spoke to some of them. And so that is true. Now, the fact of the matter is when they went there and after they were used to build the stadium, and, remember now that 2010 would have been during the era of Da Silva, when Brazil was, booming in terms of its economy. But after subsequent to 2012 and onward, Brazil started to deteriorate in terms of its economic development, in terms of its economy. And the more people, have to face, rigorous and rigid austere economic conditions, they become more racist. And you find tensions among different classes and racial groups. And in Brazil, where you have also a wide swath of different ethnic and racial groups, I think that they would not have particularly welcomed the Haitians, right? Because Brazil, even though they say that they're a racial democracy, when you go to Brazil, that is what they like to talk about, right? Their racial democracy, that they don't believe in, racializing their people as Americans do. And there is a difference between Brazil and America. All right, Americans tend to look at race in this inductionist or from this inductionist point of view, right? They just see people as black and brown and um, Hispanic, whatever that means, because sometimes the black person can be brown too, right? Or might have look like he has, or he or she has white pigmentation. Well, there's no white person, but you know what I mean. You know what the word, since we're all bamboozled and deceived by what we have learned in school, and you are so conditioned to believe that, let me just use that as the standard definition. So in Brazil, people, on the other hand, while they look at color and shadism in terms of your skin's pigmentation, but they tend, you're not going to be called an Afro-Brazilian or a Japanese Brazilian or a Chinese Brazilian. For the purposes of research, they might do that, but in everyday life, you are a Brazilian. Okay? Eu sou Brasil, do Brasil. Right. So the fact of the matter is that they look upon themselves as Brazilian, Brasileiro, right? That's the word I was looking for, because the word is, the country is Brazil, right? But eu sou brasileiro, brasileiro, or brasileira, right? Which means I'm Brazilian, right? The name just eluded me. I was wondering, I'm saying Brazil, right? Brazil. Brazil is the word for the country, but brasileiro is Brazilian, Brazilian in terms of the male, and brasileira for Brazilian female. So they do not really look upon people, their citizens, as, just looking at their color, but they do practice, you do get jobs based on your color. And that is the conundrum, that is the paradox, that if you are going to be economically solvent and economically prosperous in Brazil, you have to have a certain, the more European you look, that is, in terms of your economic prosperity, that is how it's going to happen, right? That is how you are going to be able to live a decent life. The darker your complexion, and I'm not saying no, all Black people, you have to be fortunate, or you might have been born into a fortunate family, right? But that is in the minority. So like, for example, Pelé, right? He was a footballer, so he would have lived a certain standard of living among other Black Brazilians, some of whom, when I went to Bahia do Salvador, right, where they have lots of Black people there, right? So the family that I stayed with, which were Black, right, as Black as I am, as dark as I am, but they were lawyers and they were progressive Black Brazilians. So they lived well, right? But I'm saying the majority of people who look like you and me are not living well in Brazil, right? Because of the shadism. The lighter you are, the more European you look, is the more you're going to find yourselves in the top corporate institutions and organizations in Brazil, right? So I'm sure the Haitians, that's the point I was trying to make. I'm sure the Haitians would not have been welcomed there, but they used that to build the stadium. But after the stadium was built and the racism started, of course, many of them perhaps would not want to have gone there in the era of Trump. Some of them did try, but Trump, had a more what people say was a racist agenda. Was it the TPS that he had that law that was instituted, and then the pandemic hit in 2019-20 there, 2020, where he actually prevented Haitians from coming in, right? Because he talked about protecting the nation from coronavirus. But Biden continued that law in which he also, prevented lots of Haitians from accessing and, immigrating into the States. Now, this article came here from Quixote Center, right? And the title of it says, Biden has deported nearly as many Haitians in his first year as the last three presidents combined, right? Let me repeat that. Biden has deported nearly as many Haitians in his first year as the last three presidents combined, right? Allow that to sink in for a moment. So this is nothing about Trump. This is a continuation of the policies, right? Because remember that Trump had used derogatory words to describe Haitian people and Haiti, the country, right? And people were offended and they were saying, oh, because Haiti is Black and because Trump is racist, that is why he's doing that. And Trump, we understand based on what the left-wing media has been preaching to us and has been saying during his 4 years in office, that he is the most racist, right, president that the United States has ever seen. Is that true? Really? Right? Because if we understand your American history, we're going to understand that he was not. Right? We would understand that Trump was not the most racist because Trump was just responding to stimuli. Trump was doing the bidding of the US empire. Trump does not have the power, or any president in the US office does not have that power to do what they want to do, right? And hence the problem with Trump, because he sometimes wanted to do whatever he wanted to do, right? And thought that the presidency was power that he had amassed and that he could do anything he wanted to do. But he learned that that was not so. And Obama was trying to tell him before he came to the presidency that a lot of what you see is not what you get, right? And when you get inside, you realize that there are forces behind forces who are going to control you, right? And this is what many of the US presidents understand when they get into power. That yes, it's a powerful office, but it's a symbolic office in the sense that the power does not stop there. It's powerful, all right? The executive branch of the United States government is a powerful office, and nobody is underestimating that fact. However, what you have to understand, a lot of times behind the scenes, the president does not run the show. What he does, he articulates, right? He is the symbol of the power structure that is in Washington, D.C., right? And you've got to understand that. So anything that Trump does, Obama is going to continue because we call it the continuation of government, COG. Remember now, when Barack Obama came to office, we thought that he was going to end the wars, and immediately the wars in Afghanistan, right, and Iraq, and we were going to return to a normal world. Because remember now that after 9/11, the world had gone into an abnormal sort of mode, right? It wasn't a normal world, right? We're still not living in a normal world. We have never been living in a normal world, but more so after 9/11, particularly for the United States of America, which thought it had freedoms that it cherished. But we saw an evaporation of the freedoms after 9/11, right? Particularly after the enactment of the Patriot Act 1, 2, and 3. I think we have Patriot Acts 1, 2, and 3, right? I just don't think it's 1 and 2. I think there's another one. Somebody can correct me if you will. But I think that there are 3 enactments of the Patriot Act, which is really it supplant those Patriot Acts supplant the U.S. Constitution. What you have written in the Patriot Acts cannot cohere also with the principles outlined in the U.S. Constitution. And Americans have to understand that. And you need to also read what is in the Patriot Acts to see if you're really living in a democracy or you're living under a military dictatorship. A soft is not yet, very, what should I say now? It has not yet fully morphed into that dragon-like military dictatorship, but very soon it is going to morph into that phase, right? So Americans have to be ready and prepared for that to happen. So if Biden is doing that, this is a president, after Trump had lost the election in 2020, right? November of 2020. And when he came into office, that's Biden now, when President Biden came into office in 2021, January thereabout, right? He came into office and all the newspapers, including the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Guardian newspapers, all of them are saying Washington is back, right? Because in their understanding, or trying to deceive you, trying to brainwash you, to condition you, the public, they were trying to let you know, they were alluding to the fact that, Trump's, what's his name now, his administration was so chaotic, which I think that was the perception that the media houses, conveyed to us, right? But really and truly, Trump's presidency was normal according to the imperial, right? The imperial agendas of the United States. It was a normal presidency. He was a normal American president. We have which an extraordinary ego, right? An oversized ego, we can say. And he took on the media and whatever they said against him, he responded to them, and all of that, right? This was a showman. And it was entertaining for Americans because they, Americans like to watch soap operas and they like to watch reality TV show. And Trump can be called the king of the reality TV show, right? So because Americans love that, the media houses gave them, and they made loads of money entertaining Americans and the world at large, right? And Americans laughed and they became, why did he say that? And you behaved stupidly, right? Because you're stupid to believe that the showmanship and all that was going on during the Trump era was something that was serious. You took it seriously. But the things that you should have taken seriously are the things that you did not take very seriously. By looking carefully at the policies that he was, inking out. You took very seriously things that he had to say. And Trump, to be frank, had more barks than bites, right? He's a guy who he barks more, right? The Democratic administrations, even under your Black President Barack Obama, they bite more than how they bark. They both bark and they bite, right? They bark and bite. But Trump was more barking and less bites, or fewer bites, I should say, right? If you will. So you've got to understand the difference. But the Biden administration has, in fact, right, deported many more Haitians than Trump could have even imagined to have done. Biden has expelled nearly as many Haitians in 12 months as 20,200 plus, as were deported during the previous 20 years, 22,000, 23,000 under 3 different presidents, right? So the 3 different presidents before Biden deported among those three is 22,000 to 23,000, whilst Biden, in his first 12 months in office, right, he deported 20,200 Haitians, right? And remember now that President Biden came during a time after he had come into office. It was in July 2021, right, that um, Jovenel Moise was assassinated in Haiti. And then the president, I mean, Haiti was always a chaotic country, but the country plunged even more into more chaos after the death of Jovenel Moise in July 2021. And those were just a few months shortly after President Biden had won the election and had officially been seated in office, right? This is something that we have to understand. And many people, even now, still talk about the fact that, oh, you have to vote for Biden because we have to prevent dictatorship from coming to America. We have to vote for freedom and democracy, right? We have to vote for freedom and democracy. Now, who do you think controls what is going on in Haiti? Right? The United States is a principal actor, even though you have other actors, but she is the principal actor of that scene in Haiti, right? And all the people there, the officials in government, have to do the bidding of the United States of America. I did tell you about what happened in 2010 in Jamaica, where they had, I would say that was a soft coup. When President Golding had to limit office, that was a soft coup that we have not, because Jamaicans are noted not to express truthfully what is happening, right? So nobody, I'm sure there's no history book in Jamaica that is going to describe the 2010 Tivoli incursion as a soft coup by the US government. They're not going to describe it as such, because maybe that would ruffle too many feathers, and people just want to maintain the status quo, right? The President Obama, under his administration, went to Jamaica and killed, along with the military incursion there, using drones and other warlike military weapons, right, upon a hapless, impoverished people in Tivoli Gardens, killing over 70 people. But guess what? Nothing's wrong with that, because just some Black people, he killed and they died. So what? So what? some hapless Black people, right? And the same thing is happening in Haiti. And then how many years afterwards? 12 years after, 13 years afterwards, we have President Andrew Holness, Prime Minister Andrew Holness, rather, leading CARICOM, he and Mia Mottley, into implementing some very risky and dangerous US policies in Haiti, right? So we can't depend on the color of one's skin to define how genuine a person is or is not. And I'm not sure what's the difference between Trump and Biden. As a matter of fact, I think that Biden is more dangerous than Trump, because he has been in office since the 1970s, right? Has he been, or, latter part of the 60s, right? Biden has been there. He knows very well the grandiose bureaucracy that is in Washington, D.C. And he has made many laws that have not been favorable to people of color, right? But because the media houses are trusted, people sit and they read their New York Times, and they listen to CNN and MSNBC, and that is authentic news. And people will come and they will say what they hear on these news, not understanding these news media, rather, not understanding that they're lies and half truths. And if they're half truths, they're lying. The end result, the end game, is to lie. because the truth is the truth. The truth cannot be merged, cannot be adulterated. It has to be said even when it is painful. Right? The truth has to be said. But the media have mastered this game of brainwashing, where they tell you half truths and lies, and then you don't even know what is truth from lie. You don't even know what is real from what is unreal. Right? So you trusted that Washington was back under President Biden and Kamala Harris, and that these two were going to lead us into a more peaceful, humane world. And we're seeing that that is to the contrary. And what sayest thou? Now that you know the truth, what sayest thou? Because many of you voted for Biden, and you are going to be held accountable for the blood that is being shed around the world. All these wars that Biden has started is going to be laid on your shoulder and on your conscience, because you voted for the man. And if you vote for Trump, the same thing is going to happen. Right? Because God expects us to vote intelligently, to read and to understand, and then to ask him for wisdom in terms of what we need to do. Some of us think that we're just functioning in, oh, God is on his throne, and he's there and I'm here. And God doesn't understand what's going on in this world. You know, you've got to be kidding me. When the Bible says that he is the one who sets up and he puts down. Right? He sets up and he puts down. And a lot of times he gives us what we are due, what we deserve. That's the word I was looking for. He gives us what we deserve because of our wicked hearts. We have fooled ourselves because of our wicked, unintelligent hearts that we choose evil men. And because we are evil, they inflict, he allows them, that God allows them to inflict untold harms upon us. And then we cry out and we want the Lord to help us when we didn't care about consulting him about the very people that we are trying to vote for and to put in office. Even though he's the one who is going to eventually put them in office, but he also gives us freedom of choice. If you understand what I mean. Right? And Biden was not the perfect guy for office. Obviously, he wasn't. One, mentally, his cognitive skills are deficient. I don't think the president even knows if he sometimes is where he is. He seems to be totally, lost. Right? And this is the man that the US actually voted for. Well, the majority of people, we should say, voted for him because they thought that he would have done a better job and that he would have been more inclusive, right? Because you heard these theoretical frameworks coming from the Harvard universities and from the Princetons and from the Columbias, and you believe that. You believe in diversity and equity and inclusion, and these guys don't believe in anything that they're saying about divergent equity and inclusion, right? Because that was the same thing that the French Revolution talked about. Égalité and liberté and fraternité, right? And at the end of the day, blood spilled in France like water, right? Because all they were seeking is brotherhood, liberty, and equity, right? Equality. We're all equal. And blood flowed like water on the streets of France. And the same thing is going to happen to the world on a grander scale, even more so in the United States of America, because the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And the United States has gotten a lot of light, but it is acting right now as Rome was acting in the period of the Dark Ages. It is acting like that. You're killing people, and many of you don't even care. You don't even care what is happening to the Haitians. The fact that they're down there and they're actually having, you know, nothing to eat, sometimes nothing to drink, bodies strewn on the streets like garbage, right? And it doesn't matter to you. You don't think that that is right in your backyard. And very soon, the winds are going to blow their bodies right to the front door of your house. And you will have to bear that stench. It's coming. It is coming. And people are asking me, oh, do you think that what is happening in Haiti is going to affect what's happening in nearby countries, in neighboring countries? Yes, it's going to affect, including the US, and have more disastrous effects upon US, because the blood that is being shed right now is going to have a deleterious effect on US citizens. And already we know, based on the wars that have been waged in the world, that over 70% of US citizens are on antidepressants, right? This is judgment of God upon the citizens of the United States. Because if 70% of the population, and we talk about not to talk about the medication, they're so, extensively medicated. It's very unusual not to find a US citizen who is on a lot of medication for different aspects of, health conditions that they might be experiencing. Right? That's a curse. That is a curse upon a population. Right? With all the wealth that America has generated, to have so many people. Let's not talk about the education and the fact that many Americans are just living in a daze. They don't understand. They're not even aware of the country in which they live. They sit there every day and they shop and they get big, become obese, eating all of this nonsense that you're eating. And it's also affecting your ability to think. And you get to some of these universities and you listen to how the students sometimes in the class, how they reason. And I have taught there and I understand, and they can't reason for the most part. A serious deficiency in reasoning. Right? But they get their degrees and they graduate and they go to their Wall Street and they make their big bucks and they think that they're important. Right? Because the system is designed that way, to give you low levels of education and then to deceive you by giving you a nice job, a cozy nice job. You stay there and you spend all this time and you accrue this sort of importance to yourself. Right? You think that you're important? I have news for you. I have news for you. Right? Because this is ridiculous that we have this guy who many people had said that was going to bring this freedom and democracy to the world. And what we're having is worse than what Trump had when he was in office. Just wars being waged one after the other. In the Ukraine, in the Gaza area, and now we're seeing in Yemen, and now we're seeing a war being waged in Haiti. For nothing. For nothing. Only because the US is desirous of letting the region know that she runs the show. Right? She runs the show. And Haiti is the only country in this region who understands clearly that the US is an empire. Jamaica doesn't understand. The Trinidadians don't understand. The Barbadians don't understand. The Guyanese don't understand. The Antiguans don't understand. The St. Vincents, what you call them, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they don't understand. Right? They don't understand the mission of the United States. Any little problem that happens in Jamaica, or that happens in Trinidad, or that happens in Barbados, or that happens in the Dominican Republic, they're going to want to call the US. The US will solve the problem. The Haitians know that the US is going to make the problem worse. It's going to compound the problem. They know that, right? Look at what happened in Tivoli Gardens again in Jamaica, 2010. And the people, when the US came, showed up and killed some Black people, some impoverished Black people. It was nothing because the US solved the problem. And afterwards, Dudus was taken, and Dudus did not bear any brunt of US anger, right? But the people who were not a threat to the US nor to the Jamaican government, they suffered the consequences, right? And the same thing is going to happen in Haiti. I'm sure that many of these gang members or these gang leaders are not going to suffer the consequences of what they're doing there. It's the ordinary civilian population, populace, that will suffer the consequences and the full brunt of US anger, right? That's what's going to happen. This happened in Jamaica. This happened in Jamaica in 2010, right? A country that likes to brag that it has a robust democracy supported and defended by so-called intellectuals like Professor Orlando Patterson, right? Who, in his late stage of as a professor at Harvard University, wrote the book The Confounding Island. Confounds it. And only if Professor Orlando Patterson would speak the full truth, it wouldn't be as confounding as it is, right? If Orlando Patterson dedicates himself to speak the entire truth, nothing but the truth, Jamaica would not be a confounding island, because it's clear, it's evidently clear that the island was not intended to be a progressive island in this side of the hemisphere. Right? You just had too many rebellious slaves on that island, and the British have not forgotten that you just had too many rebellious slaves on that island, and they would never want that island, just like Haiti, to be developed, because Jamaicans have that rebellious spirit in them. They have that, keen sense of independent spirit where they do not want to be controlled. Right? They do not want to be controlled, and they will stand up to authorities. Right? But if you make them poor and hapless and ignorant, then no matter what they do, you can always manipulate them and kill them in the final analysis, as what happened to the people in Tivoli Gardens. Right? And this happened under a Black president of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. And in 2015, after that took place in 2010, Jamaicans rolled out a red carpet to welcome Barack Hussein Obama to the island. He was even invited to the University of the West Indies, and nobody dared ask him at the University of the West Indies, which they should have, because they are the intellectual seat of the nation, right? And they dared not ask him. They dared not ask him when he went there, why? Why did you send those military forces with drones and other military weapons into Jamaica? Why did you do it when the problem could have been resolved diplomatically? Right? The problem could have been resolved diplomatically. And Jamaica is a very small island. You tell me that the US didn't have the tools to know where Christopher Dudus Coke was. I think they knew. And I think Jamaica government knew where he was. right? He wasn't any fugitive as we were told he was, right? And yet still, some poor Black people were sacrificed to have preserved the life of a criminal. Hmm? And I'm not saying here now that the people in Tivoli Gardens were right to contest and to protest and do that. I'm not saying that. I'm not defending them for defending a criminal. But the government's job was to right the wrongs because the government of the day understood that these people are ignorant. And because the government had failed to do its job, they had to rely on a criminal to sustain their lives from day to day. Right? And that is what happened in Tivoli Gardens, in modern Jamaica, in the 21st century. Right? And where is discussion? Where is that serious discussion being held about what took place and the consequences for such an action taken by the US and the government of Jamaica combined? It was a combined effort. So dare you not blame the US on, because Jamaica is equally culpable. Right? And you have this government, you have this former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding. And Bruce Golding is heading or is a part of the team that is going to elect this transitional government for Haiti. What is in the Prime Minister's, the ex-Prime Minister's mind? I don't know. I don't know what Golding is thinking. Because he should understand more than anyone else in the Caribbean, having been deposed, literally being deposed, a soft coup, he should have understood that the US is not there to bring freedom and democracy to Haiti. He knows that. He has to know that. I don't think he is that foolish. In fact, he's a very intelligent man. So I do not think, I'm not going to be fooled that Golding doesn't understand that freedom and democracy under US leadership will never happen. As outlined here in the book, Taking Haiti, let's go back to just itemize what he said, that the Marines, when they went to Haiti, installed a puppet president, right? Dissolved the legislature at gunpoint, right? That's what they did. Denied freedom of speech and forced a new constitution on the Caribbean nation, one more favorable to foreign investment. And be careful, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you who are especially located in the Caribbean region, when they talk about foreign investment, it means neo-slavery, neo-colonialism, neoliberalism, which means, therefore, that these foreign investors come to the country or they go to the country and they steal your resources. They buy off at cheap prices your natural resources. And then they tell you that you can't go to your beaches, as like what is happening in Jamaica. Jamaicans, for the most part, are denied access to their beaches. Right? While these politicians, because they have money and they have access to money, they're able to go to these beaches and to enjoy them. Right? Now, if you tell me that Jamaica is not a big slave plantation, I mean, nobody can tell me that it is not. Right? And when you speak to these intellectual people, these are people who pretend to be intellectuals, right? They are just simply saying, America was in a similar position. It took years for them to have developed. So Jamaica is likewise the same. Have you ever heard such nonsense? Such nonsense, utter nonsense, that comes from the Jamaican so-called intellectuals, right? Every day they're down there trying to make sense of what is happening in Jamaica because they do not want to enlighten the population. They do not want to tell all the truth to the people because the people will revolt immediately, right? They would have a revolution right there. If I were to tell the people that the IMF is not there to develop the Jamaican economy, but simply destroy it, you think people would not have, they would not revolt? In fact, the IMF went to Jamaica, for example, and literally stole funds from the National Housing Trust. And that National Housing Trust, the NHT, was designed to help to build homes for poor people, for the impoverished. Yet the government took funds from that, billions of dollars from the NHT, and gave it to a neo-colonial, neoliberal economic powerhouse like the IMF and the World Bank, who pretend to be helping nations. Right? This is something that is really, really unsettling. Now, it's interesting, and I want to know, there's something here that is very important to read and for particularly Americans to understand and to grasp. And it's coming from Chalmers, and he wrote a book, Dismantling the American Empire. Dismantling the Empire. Let me see if I could get the figure. Dismantling the Empire. I think it was the best quote for something. But this is a book that he has written. This was his last book on the American Empire. And this is in chapter 2 rather, and he has Empire versus Democracy. Right? And this was written, these are a series of essays that he had written before his death. So this essay was written on January 30th, 2007, right? Where Chalmers died in 2010. He says here, history tells us that one of the most unstable political combinations is a country like the United States today that tries to be a domestic democracy and a foreign imperialist. So it's a combination that doesn't work, right? You're trying to be a domestic democracy, and then on foreign soil, you are an imperialist. Why this is so can be a very abstract subject. Perhaps the best way to offer my thoughts on this is to say a few words about my book, Nemesis, and explain why I gave it the subtitle, The Last Days of the American Republic, right? Because this is one of the title of his book, Nemesis. Go and read Chalmers Johnson's books on the American Empire. If you have not read them yet, you will greatly benefit from his books. He has 4 out there now. The one was that we constantly read from The Sorrows of Empire. I think I've also made some quotations from Nemesis, right? The Last Days of the American Republic, right? And he also has another one called Blowback. And this one that I'm reading from is titled Dismantling the American Empire. Read these books, and then if you pretend like you know, and the more we talk to you, you realize that you are dumb. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand what this military structure that the US has built up is all about. And that is going to destroy your lives eventually, just like it's destroying or has destroyed many lives around the world, including the lives of many Haitians, right at your backyard, right there. And some of you are not paying attention, right? Because you would rather follow the news of the P. Diddy's and the Bob Marley's and these entertainers that have nothing to offer you more than, yeah, 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 yeah. Where is the mind? And sometimes you look at us and you're wondering, what is happening? What is happening to our people? have not yet come off the plantations. Chalmers is here. I never set out to write a trilogy in our increasingly endangered democracy. But as I kept stumbling on ever more evidence of the legacy of the imperialist pressures we put on many other countries, as well as the nature and size of our military empire, one book led to another. So here Chalmers is also describing his own country, the United States of America, as a military empire, because she's what? She's a military dictatorship, right? Remember that an empire is dictatorship because it dominates, dominar. It dominates. It controls, right? It coerces, right? It's not by choice. So you're not voting for a president by choice. It is what the military industrial complex imposes upon you. And then you say, okay, yeah, I'll choose X or Y, but X and Y are the same, right? They're the same because they work for the empire, the imperial presidency, as Chalmers often suggests. Professionally, I am a specialist in the history and politics of East Asia. In 2000, I published Blowback, The Costs and Consequences of American Empire, because my research on China, Japan, and the two Koreans persuaded me that our policies there would have serious future consequences. The book was noticed at the time, but only after 9/11 did the CIA term I adapted for the title Blowback become a household word and my volume a bestseller. So he had written the book in 1994, Blowback, but Americans didn't take him seriously. And after 2001, after September 11, not 2001, people started to read the book and it became a bestseller because then they realized a lot of what he had to say, okay, were authentic truths, painful truths that he has unveiled, right? He's not covering up anything. He's telling you as it is, right? I had set out to explain how exactly our government came to be so hated around the world. As a CIA term of tradecraft, blowback does not just mean retaliation for things our government has done to and in foreign countries. I want you to listen carefully to Chalmers Johnson's definition of blowback. It refers specifically to retaliation for illegal operations carried out abroad that were kept totally secret from the American public, right? So the blowback is going to come as a result of things the US has done secret that you are not even aware of. And when these things happen, you'll be, oh, you're seeing so many things being blown up and things happening in the cities, and you're wondering, how are these things happen? There is no context, right, to say what is what. And then you listen, you turn on the MSNBC, you turn on your CNNs, and you're listening, right, with dead brains, because you can't think, you have no context. These operations have included the clandestine overthrow of governments various administrations did not like, the training of foreign militaries in the techniques of state terrorism, the rigging of elections in foreign countries, and interference with the economic viability of countries that seemed to threaten the interests of influential American corporations, as well as the torture of or assassination, rather, of selected foreign leaders. The fact that these actions were at least originally secret means that when retaliation does come, as it did so spectacularly on September 11, 2001, the American public is incapable of putting the events in context, right? And that's what I've been using this word a lot, that we have to contextualize everything that happens. We can't just say this happened and it's just out of context. Trump became president because all of that is. We have to contextualize even the presidents coming into power and why they are there and why they chose or choose that particular personality, right? Because the personality that is given to you is not going to change or unchange America or the world, right? It's impossible for one person to do that, right? But they select a particular personality to play that role to entertain you because you love to be entertained and to be fooled. And that is what, until you are hit by something serious and then you begin to wake up just a little. And then afterwards, you go back into your nonsensical gimmicks. Not surprisingly, then, Americans tend to support speedy acts of vengeance or revenge intended to punish the actual or alleged perpetrators. These moments of lashing out, of course, only prepare the ground for yet another cycle of blowback, right? So this is what is going to happen. So when we talk about blowback, we're talking about the fact that there are going to be consequences for American secret military operations that you and I are not even aware of. And then when these consequences do happen, we are not going to be able to say specifically or to link that particular event to something that might have happened in the past. But it's as a result of something that happened in the past, right? But the more you read about the role, the agendas, and the mission of the US empire, is the more you are going to be able to connect the dots, right? Because they have a playbook, and these people are not as bright as you think they are. They can only do so many things and no more. So the more you read about their actions, it's the more you are going to be able to determine what they are all about and their missions, right? And you've got to wake up. You've got not only to look at Haiti, oh, what's happening in Haiti would never come to America, because you are a fool if you think that that is so, right? You would be foolhardy to think that that is so, because it's going to happen, and in a worse scenario. Remember, again, I said that to whom much is given, much is required. And the United States got a lot of light from God, and they know that what they're doing is wrong. But because they want to contest, and because they want to wield their military, economic, and political power on some impoverished people around the world, because they want to be lauded and to be worshipped, to be adored, because there's a vacuum in their hearts. They themselves don't even know who they are. And in order to fill that vacuum, that void, they seek this sort of adoration from these poor, impoverished nations. We've got to wake up and to see that both administrations, whether Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the United States, they have the same agenda. What you can do if you want to change things and to sort of hold back the winds of strife, as the Bible, to use a Bible quotation, so hold back the winds of strife, mean that we're trying to prevent war from happening now and for us to have a total devastation of the world. Use them. And if the Republican Party says that it is anti the war in Haiti, you vote for them, even though they might not be genuine, but at least you are responding to something that is good. But what you're seeing happening in Haiti, in the Ukraine, in the Gaza Strip, what would be in your mind to want to think of voting for the Democratic Party? Because then you are aiding and abetting whatever they do. Because you say it's a democracy, right? And it is government by and of and for the people. So you are sending them there to office to kill and to wage wars, right? That you and your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will be held responsible for. As Chalmers Johnson is here suggesting, there is going to be a blowback And in another book, I think it was in Nemesis, the goddess of warfare, that he mentioned, that Chalmers mentioned that blowback means essentially you reap what you sow. A nation reaps what it sows. And America, because of its draconic policies toward Haiti, is about, and other countries of the world, is about to reap what she has sown, right? And it's not going to be healthy reaping, right? It's not going to be a reaping that you are going to enjoy. It's not going to be palatable to your palates, right? It is going to be poisonous, destructive, and devastating, right? Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you would like, you subscribe, and you will leave a thoughtful comment. Remember now that you must like the videos, because if you don't like the videos will not be shared. And if they're not shared, then the subscribers will not subscribe, right? So, but the more you like the videos are shared on this platform. And you must remember that the platform right now is not very accommodating to messages that I am propagating, right? When it comes down to the military-industrial complex and the wars being waged, this platform does not support these sort of, presentations or discourses. So be sure to like the videos so that the videos that can be pushed, right? Even though you have serious hurdles, but they can be pushed by the algorithms so that our videos can be listened to and people can be informed around the world. Thank you so much. All the best to you. See you in the next video.